welcome to the Movie Sellers Month of Horrors, Terrors Through Time. I'm Dan, and I'm bringing you my 1990s pick. I'm doing this with no notes, so we'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll totally mess it up. But I watched 1993's The Dark Half. I'm so excited to talk about this movie. It stars a dude named Timothy Hutton, who was in a lot of movies, most of which I didn't really know. He was in Ordinary People, which was a very famous movie from the 80s, I think. Like a drama. I don't know. But what really drew me to this movie, and the reason I picked it, is because of the writing and directing duo. You will not be surprised to hear when I tell you, written by Stephen King, directed by the one and only George A. Romero. You know my love for Romero. And if you don't know my love for Romero, go to the Movie Seller podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, and go look up my George A. Romero series. I did a 3-parter on the man. He's my favorite director of all time. And I've covered a multitude of his films on the show, from the Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, that whole side. But we've also done Martin, Night Riders. We've done his Lost films. I love Romero, and I love every chance that I get to talk about him. So I was really surprised to come across one of his films that I hadn't seen. I wasn't surprised about the movie. I knew about the movie. I was surprised that as I was trying to remember when I had watched it, realizing I never had watched it. So it's like, well, shit, this is the one. This is the one we gotta do. So this is the one we did do. Now, the plot is very interesting. It's a very Stephen King plot. And just to be clear, this was a novel that he wrote before the film. So the idea of the movie is this. There's this author, right? Well, first of all, there's this little boy at the beginning, and he's got this tumor that's giving him seizures, and they cut it out, and they're like, hey, yo, like, they talk to his parents, and they're like, this was like a twin that was reabsorbed, but not fully, and so we had to get it out of his head because it was causing him seizures. You find out later that they buried the tumor, like, because it was their, it was their son or whatever, the twin that had never been born, and so for the grief process they buried the tumor as like this other son. The dude grows up, Thad, to be an author, a fantastic author. He prolific. Well, he wrote some other stuff under a pseudonym, George something or other, I believe. Well, this one guy comes to his class one day, because he's like a college professor or whatever. After the lecture, says, hey, can you sign my book? He hands him a book. It's written by this other guy. He goes, that's not me. He goes, yeah, it is. I know it is. And as a matter of fact, unless you write me a check, I'm going to tell the whole world it's you. And so he goes to his publicist. He says, what are we going to do about this? What's the deal? And his publicist tells him, what do you want to do? He says, I think we should just tell the world that it's me. And we should kind of like kill off this alter ego. The thing you got to understand about the books that this other version, this pseudonym, the thing about the books written under this pseudonym they are way more violent and trashy and like not like high class stuff like what he wants to write as Thad. He doesn't want to be associated with these things, but he's like, you know what, whatever. We'll kill off this like character and we'll move on. Well, they decide to do that. They even do like a photo shoot at his burial plot. Keep that in mind. Like they've just killed off this guy. Great. Well, next day, one of the dudes who was involved in the photo shoot is dead And they go to the gravesite. The gravesite's all dug out. Oh shit. So this other version of him is now in the world and is like attacking people and killing people that are involved in this whole like killing off this George character. And he gets to Thad and he's like, hey, here's the deal, man. Like, you gotta keep writing. And you gotta keep writing these stories, or else I'm going to, like, keep harming the people that you love. He can't kill Thad directly, but he can, like, hurt his wife. He can, you know, he's got kids. He's got twin kids, by the way. So I think there's kind of, like, a thing there. It's never fully developed, but kind of makes you think, like, oh, does the cycle continue? Anyway, ultimately, Thad deals with George. You can watch the movie to kind of find out how that all resolves. But George is done away with, and they're all free. So that's the story. Now, what's really cool about this movie, besides the fact that it was directed by George Romero, besides the fact that it was written by Stephen King, is the fact that it is very parallel to Stephen King's experience. Stephen King wrote under the pseudonym Richard Bachman throughout the 70s and 80s. And it was some of his, believe it or not, darkest content that he wrote. He did this without people knowing that it was him. This was not like a fun little cheeky thing he was doing and everybody knew. No one knew. Which was a big deal for an author as famous as him. Well, the same exact thing happened. Somebody came along and tried to blackmail him. And so he had to come out and, like, you know, say that he was Richard Bachman and that was the whole deal there. So this whole story is very interesting. There's also this point in the movie where, you know, it's kind of like he's struggling with, like, he had given up drinking and should he, you know, he's like struggling with, like, being drawn back toward drinking because of this whole thing and because of the twin and all that stuff. And so, oh yeah, like the George character is the twin, the tumor twin thing. So it's just kind of cool. It's a really cool concept. It's really cool for Stephen King to have, like, written this after going through all this, you know, obviously not the supernatural element of it, not the whole, like, tumor twin thing element of it, but this, like, being outed for his pseudonym and having to kind of give up his darker side. So I thought that was really neat. This movie feels like it's directed by George Romero, so it's very, like, no nonsense, no frills, like, really, really well executed, really clean movie from, like, start to finish. I enjoyed it so much. I would say I was pleasantly surprised. I don't know why I'd be surprised that a movie by my favorite director, written by, you know, an author that I really enjoy, and I really love their collaborations, like on things like Creepshow and stuff. I shouldn't have been surprised, but I had never watched it, and it's not really one of those movies that's top of any lists, so I didn't really know what to expect of it, but damn, like, yes, it's good. It's really good. And I think that a lot of that has to do, you know, with the actor who played Thad, and George is the same actor, and how he is able to be both so kind and affable and, like, somebody you have this, like, great level of, like, empathy toward. And then he's able to be, like, this monster character, this, like, mean, nasty, like, you know, black, slick back hair, like, asshole kind of character. The fact that this same guy was able to play both versions so well is what really made this movie work and really knocked it out of the park. And I didn't write notes down, which is really disappointing because I gotta mention one other actor who I should definitely remember his name. Yeah. Michael Rooker. Yes, Michael Rooker. So, you guys may know him as Merle from what, The Walking Dead, Daryl's older brother. He's also in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. The blue dude blows, he whistles and the arrow and all that stuff. He was so good in this. He plays like a local police officer who's like trying to help them figure this thing out. And he's just really, really good because he's like, this sounds really fucked up and makes no sense. But also at the same time, he's like giving the guy the benefit of the doubt. And then when the evidence piles up to make it pretty clear that, Thad is not the one doing all these killings, he sides with them, even though in some of the scenarios he has to like bend the law or what he should be doing from a legal perspective. I thought he was so good in this movie. He's obviously a lot younger than the stuff that he's probably most famous for, but he was really, really good in it. And I was pleasantly surprised to see him in it, and then to see him really like knock it out of the park the way that he did. So, was the dark half scary? It was scary in sort of an introspective sense of like, do we have a dark side? And who will win? Our dark side or our good side? But not really scary in like you're on the edge of your seat and like totally like in suspense kind of scary. And not scary in the sense of like it haunts your dreams kind of scary. Is it a good Halloween movie? I think it's a pretty solid Halloween movie. It has some it's got some really good gore, which kind of surprised me. It didn't feel like a movie that would be particularly like gory, but the scenes like where people get killed and stuff, Romero does Romero things and really brings it. So, the gore is very solid, and it kind of like shocks you because you're like, this doesn't feel like this kind of movie, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, what's happening? And yeah, just takes place in Maine. It's kind of like cloudy all the time. It's kind of just got this sort of eeriness about it. So it's a decent Halloween movie. It's one that you want to sit down and watch, though. It's not like one of these where you want to throw it on in the background. It doesn't have that kind of Halloween vibe to it. But definitely worth checking out. And, it's one of those ones that maybe you've never heard of or maybe you've never thought about, but is very much a great film. And I think you will find it surprisingly fun to watch. So, yeah. Rating, I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 5. I think it's a really, really good movie. I was really excited with the opportunity to watch it, and then that it, really surpassed my expectations. And just to find another Romero film that I loved. So, yeah, that's it. Come back tomorrow, and we'll tell you about some more terrors through time. Bye.